welcome. You're watching The Nation. I'm Jason Wee. Happy Chinese New Year. 新年快乐,万事如意. And to all those who are celebrating Chinese New Year today, I hope you are having a wonderful time with your family. Now, Chinese New Year is known for a time of connecting with your family, about reflection, and about reunion. Now, across the world, Chinese families and communities are reconnecting and re-strengthening business ties as well as family ties. And joining us in the studio today is to talk about precisely the latter. We have with us is Dr. Tan Chi Meng, Assistant Professor of Business Economics at Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Dr. Tan, thank you so much for spending your public holiday and Chinese New Year with us. We really appreciate it. Now, we know that across the world, Chinese diaspora has played a pivotal role in building entrepreneurship networks, and beyond the stereotypes, that these relationships that are built on meals across informal networks shape the Chinese diaspora businesses. Now, I want to start off really just maybe kick us off with how are you spending your Chinese New Year this year?
Like I usually do, which is spending time having meals with my immediate family, my parents, my aunt, my cousin, and people like that. Nothing big, nothing fancy. It's all about being together and actually having a very meaningful reunion.
Right. And for businesses in Malaysia today, especially, it is the first day of Chinese New Year. I drove down here and the road is empty, the stores are closed. What is Chinese New Year's significance for businesses, both in Malaysia and for Chinese communities abroad?
I think it's a time for reset. It's a time for rest because, as you probably realize, that many of us work very hard, in Malaysia, overseas, and stuff like that. So Chinese New Year is a time where you can actually come together, you can actually reset ties, and even mend relationships, basically. It's a time where you actually want to start afresh. So I think for many businesses, it's settling the financial debt, but also settling the emotional debt that comes along with the New Year.
And can you tell us a bit about the traditions associated with Chinese New Year's and businesses? We know that typically after the Chinese New Year, businesses would reopen the office and you invite the lion dance.
Right.
Tell me about what are the things that are known as either be it for the Malaysian Chinese community or for Chinese communities abroad.
Well, usually Chinese businesses open on the 4th day of Chinese New Year. That's when they actually start working. And then the lion dances, the ang paos and all that. All these traditions are the ward of bad energy that may have actually been around you that you don't want from the past year.
Bad luck, go away.
Yeah, bad luck, go away. So the noise, the firecrackers, the red envelopes are there to actually get rid of the monstrosity that might be plaguing you and giving you bad luck from the past.
And tell me a bit about the pineapple. I know there's a tradition of the pineapple. You roll it in the office upon a new entry. It can be a new year or new office. What does a pineapple symbolize?
I think a lot of the traditions that we have, culturally speaking, are actually from the languages we actually use. So when you look at pineapple, the Hokkien or the Fujian dialect says ong lai, ong lai. So when you listen to ong lai, it means good luck will be coming, good luck is coming. So ong lai. So when you roll it, basically means that your good luck is rolling, it's on the roll, it's actually in motion, it's coming right now. So a lot of the symbolism is actually sort of from folklore. But we sort of adopted it after, doing the same thing for decades, if not centuries. So I would say that that's where the tradition is from. That's where the pineapple's tradition is from.
Yeah, that's true. I'm learning a lot from you. We've been speaking about this, but I'm a banana and quite disconnected from my cultural linguistic roots. But I want to ask, when we say, we all performed the yisang, we
Yes.
were tossing the salad yesterday, and the typical easy saying we do is "huat a." And across all businesses,
Yes.
you yinsang with your business friends. You always say "huat a."
Yep.
What does that actually mean, and what are the roots of that phrase?
So in Cantonese, which I'm part Cantonese by the way, so I'm raised and I'm born in the PJKL area. So for me, Cantonese is in some sense, my mother tongue, my mother dialect. So huat is probably the Hokkien version for fat. Fat basically means to prosper, and that's what it actually symbolizes.
And can you tell us about some of the sayings we do when we do yisang? So I know my favorite one I like to say is nian nian you yu. Every year we got
有余.
fish.
Yes, yes.
Obviously, the fish is not literal.
No, no.
Explain a bit about some of the sayings we do when
I mean,
we do
nian
yisang.
nian means every year. 有余, I mean, fish is the same as saying there's something remaining. So every time, every year, whatever you go through, you're always having something in reserve. That's what 年年有余 actually means. No matter how much you spend, no matter how much money you actually use, you always have something in reserve. So I mean, the typical other sayings that you have for you is 生意兴隆, or in Canada, 生意兴隆, 富贵发海, 万事如意, and all these sort of things, which basically means may you prosper, may your business be good, like 生意兴隆. And a very good one is 马到成功, which means success upon the arrival of the horse. And things of this sort. So, I mean, these are all what we call 吉祥语, or basically auspicious words that we actually say to set the tone for the new year. Because what happens to you in this year is set by the tone that you actually give yourself this day, on the first day of Chinese New Year. That's why the first day is so important, that you don't say things that are bad or negative, and just say and do positive things.
Reaffirmations.
Exactly.
You're manifesting what you want for the year to be.
Exactly.
And with yisang, speaking on the topic, one thing that most people don't know is that yisang is a uniquely Malaysian and also Singaporean.
Yes.
Malaysian and Singaporean cultural practice, where I met friends from China before, and I was like, you don't have this? And I was surprised.
No.
And I know that it also comes from Seremba. And
right.
What are similar or other practices that are practiced in other Chinese communities around the world that we might not be familiar with, even your knowledge?
I mean, the yusang thing is definitely a very interesting thing. So when you look at the Chinese diaspora, there's definitely certain practices that we actually adopt from our ancestral roots in China, and then we sort of rearrange them and readopt them when we actually come out. So if you look at, the very famous Chinese food bak kut teh, for instance, is something that is very unique to either Malaysia or Singapore that we don't actually have in mainland China. Like Hokkien mee and things like that, you don't really have that. Or even Hainanese chicken rice. If you go to Hainan Island, for instance, I want Hainanese chicken rice, it's like, what is that? It's very unique to Malaysia and very unique to Singapore. So, I mean, whether you're in the US, you will have your own little quirks that, we don't usually adopt. But because the diaspora in Malaysia, Singapore, and Southeast Asia is so big, a lot of what we actually do has substantial influence on Chinese culture. We're re-influencing the people in Hong Kong. We're re-influencing people in China. That's like the same as saying, chicken tikka masala was actually invented in England, but it's actually influencing the cuisine in India to an extent. So it's really interesting that we're able to have that kind of influence, to do all that, to re-influence the so-called motherland, right? Yeah.
I mean, I think what you just described really is speaking to a very strong transnational diaspora Chinese network of businesses. Can you speak more about how prevalent, and describing a bit about how do these transnational diaspora networks work? Is it through clans? How do these relationships form across the Chinese communities across land and oceans?
The one thing we have to understand about China is it's not a monolithic society. So different kampongs or villages and different provinces, they all speak very different dialects, which are basically akin to languages. So I'm Cantonese, I can't speak Hokkien for the most part. And so it's a very different language. And as a result, people usually tend to be familiar, and they tend to be very comfortable with people that they actually can communicate with. So back in the days when there was no internet, there was very little technology, what ends up happening is people are more familiar and they feel comfortable speaking to people of their kin, people that speak the same language and so on. So the clan associations become very, very important to sort of connect people from one village or one locality to another. And because the diaspora itself is not just in Malaysia but throughout the entire world, it means that if you're trying to understand whether this particular trader, say in Jakarta, is actually trustworthy or not, one letter to your friends or your clan association there would actually help you investigate, and then they'll give you an information. So we're talking about connectivity. We're talking about why Chinese businesses have traditionally thrived and become so successful. It's because of that connectivity through clan associations, through kinship. And so this is very important for doing business with the Chinese, understanding that.
And the prominence of clan associations still prevail until today. I mean, this morning, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim went to the KL Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall to celebrate Chinese New Year. And I think that just goes to show how central these associations still are.
Right.
I want to pivot a bit to the Chinese way of doing business. Now, there was a trend on TikTok going on in the past few months where people were making slides of how do you conduct business in China, and there were some, exaggerations, but some of it was true, right? Like you need to have a meal with your potential business partner first. You don't talk about work directly. you kind of have the first few dishes, and then you only enter it maybe on like the eighth dish or some arbitrary number. Can you tell us a bit about how true is it, whether there is a Chinese way of doing business, and what are certain kernels of truth underneath this label?
I would say if you pivot back to ancient China, when you're talking about like the imperial system, where social mobility was limited, and then there was very little social security net that you could actually have. The kinship, the clan associations, family becomes a very important security net. So trust then becomes a very important issue. So what we're talking about, okay, your eighth meal or your seventh meal, you have a meal before you talk business, is to sort of establish a relationship with someone. I mean, why would you be in business with someone you don't know, and with doing business with someone you don't trust? So maybe you don't want to talk about business or immediately on your first meal, but having a rapport, knowing these people on a deeper level, on a conversational level even, would actually help build that trust and that understanding. And that's when business is actually more easily talked about.
Right. And how do you think these trust-based relationships are translating in this digital age? I spend a lot of time on TikTok, so I apologize for keep on bringing this up. But I always get sales of people from China selling neon light boards, selling mobile homes, right? And they're really direct selling to us, and it's quite amazing, partially because we're really hearing from either the first or second layer from the factory in China itself, but also you're seeing this kind of network of people coming together on a digital platform and exchanging a sort of a trust-based relationship there. How is that translated, especially on a new digital economy today?
I think they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, a lot of the big businesses that actually are conducted throughout within the Chinese community are probably done on trust-based. It's just that when you're trying to expand your network, when you're trying to expand your market, your sales, you have to sort of do all these so-called cold calls or digital cold calls, like what you're seeing on TikTok. I mean, chances are these merchants, if they're very successful, they're not doing this through just the digital marketing. They're talking deals with people. They're introduced with by some network where they gain some kind of connection, for instance. I mean, people don't deal with you on a very large level unless you're trusted.
Yeah.
I mean, why would I give you a lot of money if I don't trust you? I mean, where is the trust? Where is the belief? Where is the understanding? We need that first. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't do what they're doing right now. But I think that a lot of stuff that's going behind the scenes, the big businesses are not doing through digital means. They're doing this through conversations, through trust.
In-person meals and relationships still matter.
Of course.
The digital may be the entry point, but the dinner and the meal we share in person still matters. I wanted to also speak a bit about Southeast Asia for a moment. As you mentioned, Isang is a uniquely Malaysian and Singaporean. You have to include them there. Tradition. Tell us a bit about how has the Chinese diaspora in Southeast Asia in particular influenced businesses. I mean, we do know that the Chinese community in Southeast Asia are typically referred to as a market-dominant community, be it whether we're in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, or Thailand, which has the largest Chinese diaspora in the world. How have businesses been shaped by Chinese communities in the region?
I think when you're looking at the Chinese diaspora, whether they've arrived in Indonesia or in Malaysia, many of them might have started out small. But through the networks they actually have, they built large businesses that created lots of jobs. They become a vital part of the supply chain throughout the region, if not the international market as well. So they have definitely came leaps and bounds, compared to what they were. If you look at, say, the founder of IOI, you're looking at the founder of Genting, Mr. Tan Sri Lim Gortong. All these people had very humble beginnings. They worked hard, they connected with the associations, they borrowed money from like the clans, which gave them microfinancing and all that. And they gained the trust of the locals. They gained the trust of their workmanship, the quality, and things of this sort. And through that trust, through that network building, they became a bridge in some sense to the wider international, even Chinese community with the locals. So beyond just creating the jobs, beyond just giving people opportunities to actually thrive, they became like the purveyor, the bridge between the locals and the larger Chinese community. So I think, and because China is such a huge market, that becomes really, really important for local markets to access that market.
And as you described that, one of the books that I think about is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I know it projects a lot of horrible, maybe stereotypical tropes, but I think there are some kernels of truth in there that Southeast Asian communities have this thriving, especially Hokkien-based dialectic. how do you think these traditions have maintained from yesteryears, which are a lot more maybe perhaps tight-knit, when China wasn't that much of a prominent market power yet? And how is that translated to today across this changing world order, right? Where the rule-based order is siphoning off, it's chipping away as we speak, and there's a rearrangement in economic relationships. How have these Chinese diasporas adapted to these new changing realities?
I think the Chinese, there's a reason why there's so many Chinese who are involved in businesses. It's because there was distrust on the system for the most part. So they had to survive on their own. They had to provide for their families. So if you cannot depend on the imperial government, for instance, what would you actually do? You have to depend on yourselves. So as a result, businesses became a way of actually providing security and financial security in particular to your own people. So the adaptation process then becomes very important. When I speak to Chinese people from the mainland when they're opening businesses here, I ask them, why is it that you're here? And a very good reason is because the competition in China is great and they see great potential in actually doing business outside. So there is this adaptability that if it doesn't work in one locale, they would actually go elsewhere. So you're asking, how would they adapt to the digital age? I think if you're looking at China, that came really far from what it was. Back in 1972, when the Chinese government gave pandas, for instance, to President Nixon and his wife, they were a power that was, scoffed at. There were people who looked at them and they said, what can you do anyway? You're poor, you're not technologically advanced, you're nothing. But look at it right now. It has become a super economic power. Its military is becoming stronger. And technologically, they're just up there. Green tech, they're number one. So the adaptability of the Chinese, whether it's from the mainland or on the outside, is actually astonishing. And I think, as a second generation Chinese myself, I can definitely see a lot of things we can actually learn from the diaspora and even from people from the mainland as well.
The resilience is, I think, a story that the Chinese community
very strong, yes.
tells ourselves time and time again, and it definitely shows up in Chinese New Year. But there's also kind of an element of superstition, especially with businesses, right? And I think this shows up with not only astrology being the year of the fire horse, but also in feng shui, right? Come Chinese New Year, a lot of families and businesses hire feng shui masters.
Yes.
We have the late Master Kenny Hu as well, who spoke a lot of times on Bernama on this. Why do you think feng shui is so important for the Chinese community, and how does this contribute to business confidence in a more kind of pragmatic sense of the world?
I think a lot of people misunderstand feng shui as pure superstition. Feng shui is about how things are actually placed in your home, how things are placed in your office, and so on. So obviously, when you're going into a particular locale, whether it's your office or home, you want to have a very comfortable setup. And as a result, how things are placed, where they're placed, becomes a very, very important thing. So instead of looking at feng shui as pure superstition, we should be thinking of that as the ancient way of interior designing, ancient way of architecture, and some say, yes, it's basically the art of trying to make your living environment, your environment as a whole, as comfortable as possible. That's what feng shui is all about. So like what the late Master Kenny has actually done was he modernized that. It was not about, this year, you've actually offended the Grand Duke. We say fan tai sui or fan tai sui. Therefore, your luck is bad and all that. What he actually said was, well, there's no such thing as a good year and a bad year. It's a year, it's basically based on whether you understand how to capitalize the opportunities you have in that particular year and change or convert danger into something that's actually good. So this is what feng shui is all about. This is what, the almanac is all about. It's not about telling you how doomed you are. It's basically saying that this is what's going to happen, and so you have to be creative in your approach when you're actually dealing with a new year.
Do you have one tip for business owners listening to our story here today on what arrangement they should watch out for, especially when it comes to feng shui for the fire horse here?
I think one of the things that we have to understand about the fire horse is that the horse itself is based on the element of fire. So the horse is fast. It's a very fast thing. And then when you have the fire horse, it makes it doubly fast. So whatever your feng shui environment may be, or whatever your style may be, the one thing we have to understand is sustainability is important. So if you're going into the new year and you're moving really, really fast, take a breather. Make sure that whatever you're doing is sustainable, because you don't want to have a really good head start and it just tapers off and dies off towards the end. You don't want that to happen.
And so it is the first day of Chinese New Year today. And as you said, businesses will reopen on the fourth day of Chinese New Year. Usually, that will be like a Friday. And I think a lot of us will be tossing yisang with many of our business friends and rebuilding and reconnecting those relationships. What are some things people in the industry or in business should look out for this year when reestablishing a connection? Is it good to keep on giving mandarins? What are some auspicious wishes that you can pay special attention to this year for the Year of the Horse?
I mean, based on my personal experience, what I've realized was even weeks and even a month before going into the Chinese New Year, I have this strong urge that I want to move things quickly in my life. And so that is an opportunity. It drives you, but it's also hidden dangers. So again, we can say 恭喜发财, 生意兴隆, 富贵发财 in Cantonese, or you can say all these really good niceties to all these people. But the one thing that we have to understand when we're going to the Year of the Horse is that things may be looking very good and things may actually seem like it's accelerating, but you don't want to burn out. So I think this is something that we have to be cautious about. So I'm not just going to say that everything will be great. What I'm going to say is this: even if it is great, being humble, being close to your roots, and knowing what you're doing is very important in any year that you encounter.
And I personally relate a lot to that. I have a lot of fire signs in my astrology, so I got to really watch out. And I guess for you, what are you looking forward to making sure you're aspiring to during this Chinese New Year period? Are you looking to spend more time with friends, with family? What's your personal aspiration this season?
I mean, personally, my strongest urge is to build a more successful career, is to actually move up. But while doing that, not forgetting the people that were there for me and not forgetting that the family that was very important to my success. So in the end, success is good, but we have to sort of taper down a little bit and sort of smell the roses and ask ourselves, how did we get there? And let's not forget the people who are important to us on the sides.
Thank you, Dr. Chee-Ming. And I'm going to ask you to do something that we did briefly mention just now, which is about a blessing to our listeners and viewers. So if you want to look in the camera and also tell us about wishes, give us a wishing in Chinese and Mandarin about what aspirations Chinese New Year can look forward to.
So I wish everyone 生意兴隆, 万事如意, 马到成功. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chee-Ming. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much again for being in the studio with us, spending the first day of Chinese New Year. I know tomorrow we're going to have more to eat. Right. We're going to, there's so many cookies on my family's table that just needs to be consumed. If not, they're going to go bad as well. From all of us here at Bernama TV, 恭喜发财 and a happy Chinese New Year. I'm going to say this, 新年快乐. Ma Dao Cheng Gong. Have a happy Chinese New Year and may the Year of the Horse bring you success. If you're watching this on Chinese New Year and you're celebrating, I hope you will have a continuous, joyous time reconnecting with family and friends. And if you don't, please stay safe on the road as you travel and have all your holiday plans lined up. I'm Jason Wee. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and we'll catch you around.